I'm Sean Kabak, a forage and livestock specialist with Manitoba Agriculture. We are going to discuss extending the grazing season with corn in this video. There are a number of extended grazing options in Manitoba. These include the use of stockpiled forage, corn grazing, swath or bale grazing, corn stover, stubble grazing, and more. Extended grazing is a way to return most of the nutrients to the landscape where they are fed, and to reduce winter feeding costs, including yardage, feed, and manure removal. We're here with Brett Graham in Holland, Manitoba, and he's been corn grazing for a number of years, and so he's going to tell us a little bit about their extended grazing experience.
Yeah, so we've been corn grazing for pretty close to 20 years. We've tried bale grazing and swath grazing originally when we were deciding what to go with, and corn seemed to be the one that worked best for us, so we've stuck with that for quite a few years now. It's become quite a staple part of our winter grazing system.
When growing corn, good weed control and fertility is critical for high yields. Because of the expense of growing corn, high yields are needed to justify the cost. Corn is a very efficient user of moisture, producing double the dry matter tonnage compared to perennial forages like alfalfa or timothy per inch of water. Corn grazing can provide 225 to 375 grazing days for a 1,300-pound cow, including the residue. Adapt the cattle slowly to the corn by providing other feed to allow the rumen to adjust.
So we started looking at extended grazing as an option to reduce our winter feeding costs. So really for us, it was around that time that BSE hit that we really started to look at innovative ways to reduce that significantly, and corn grazing was one of the ones that really jumped out and was enabled us to be able to do that. Some of the big advantages we've seen from it is the reduction in equipment use and fuel consumption. As it stands right now, I'm really only starting a tractor once every 5 to 7 days to feed our cow herd. So that was one of the big improvements. Then the cost per day and the labor needed to feed corn grazing and to utilize it was reduced significantly, allowing.
At the Manitoba Beef and Forage Initiative site north of Brandon from 2016 to 2021, corn averaged 5.64 ton per acre of dry matter, producing 318 cow grazing days. The protein averaged 7.5% and the energy 75.7%. When comparing the cost of the different methods of extended grazing, stockpiled grazing was the lowest at $1.03 per cow per day, followed by corn at $1.89 per cow per day. Manitoba Ag's traditional feeding cost was $3.64 a day. To measure the corn yield to calculate the cow grazing days per acre, weigh the corn plants from 1/1000th of an acre. For 30-inch rows, weigh all the corn plants from 17 feet 5 inches a row. If the plants weigh 12 kilograms and the dry matter is 50%, this equals 6 ton dry matter per acre. Including a residue level of 20% and a dry matter consumption of 2.5%, a 1,300-pound cow requires 39 pounds per day, so a 6-ton yield will produce 338 cow grazing days an acre. When grazing corn, electric cross fencing is important to improve utilization, minimize waste, and help control grain overload. The fence strips can be mowed or knocked down with a tractor loader, aimed to provide 3 to 4 days corn at a time. Since snow is a good insulator, a strong fencer is required for the electric fence. 2 strands of wire provides optimal livestock control. Portable reels and step-in posts work well. Portable windbreaks and alternative watering systems can be used to provide shelter and water to the cattle. Snow is another option as a water source if it is plentiful. In high snowfall years that result in greater corn residue levels or drifted in field edges, the cattle can clean up a lot of this later in the spring after the snow has melted. Avoid grazing corn if field conditions are wet. Wait until after freeze-up. If conditions are too wet to make corn silage, grazing is an option. In years when wet conditions persist in the fall, molds may develop in the corn. Feed test to determine if any molds are present. Due to the high grain and starch content of corn, managing for acidosis or grain overload is important. Feeding and filling up the cows prior to moving them to a new patch of corn helps to minimize cob gorging. Feeding on previously grazed areas helps utilization. Supplement with adequate calcium minerals such as a 2 or 3 to 1. Alfalfa silage or hay is naturally higher in calcium and protein and complements the corn in the ration. Extended grazing can attract wildlife such as elk, deer, or birds. Extra caution should be used in these areas. Manitoba Ag Services Corporation has a wildlife damage compensation program that covers some of these losses. Corn stover dropped in rows works best, especially if grazing after a snow. Consider cross fencing to improve utilization, especially if there's lots of snow. When grazing corn stover, which is low in protein and low to moderate in energy, a protein and calcium supplement is required. Mid-gestation dry cows are best suited for corn stover. For anyone new to extended grazing, corn stover, regrowth on hayfields, and stubble grazing are the most economical methods to try with minimal adaptation requirements. In beef cattle operations, extended grazing can reduce manure disposal cost, it can cut winter feed cost, and decrease yardage cost. For more information, contact your nearest Manitoba Agriculture office.